Republicans and Democrats wage a bitter campaign as they fought for control of the Senate and House of Representatives.
For many voters, the midterm elections was also a chance to give their verdict on the presidency of Donald Trump. Weeks of brutal campaigning and fierce rhetoric came to a boil at the beginning of November, when millions of Americans voted in the midterm elections. On paper, the vote was to elect lawmakers to Congress and select governors for various states. But it was also a de facto referendum on the presidency of Donald Trump. The Democrats were hoping for significant gains after 2 years of controversy and chaos under Trump, and they seized the House majority from Trump's Republican Party, threatening to thwart his agenda for the remaining 2 years of his presidency. Still, Trump could take heart that the Republicans gained ground in the Senate and preserved key governorships. They beat back a blue wave that never fully materialized.
And last night, the Republican Party defied history to expand our Senate majority while significantly beating expectations in the House.
In the run-up to the vote, Trump campaigned furiously for Republican candidates and would often play the fear card, warning people that a vote for Democrats would mean more crime, uncontrolled immigration, and a weak economy. Focus turned to the so-called caravan of migrants coming from Central America through Mexico to the US border. It was an issue that Trump and the Republicans used to justify their tough stance on migration and border control. Other issues from the year loomed large of the elections. One was the acrimonious nomination of Brett Kavanaugh as US Supreme Court judge. After Trump's success in getting Neil Gorsuch to the court, many expected the White House would be able to push Kavanaugh's nomination through the Senate. But a spanner was thrown into the works when Kavanaugh was accused of having sexually assaulted Christine Blasey Ford back in 1982 while he was still a high school student. The Senate postponed its scheduled vote to allow both Blasey Ford and Kavanaugh to respond to the allegations. 2 other women also came forward and alleged that Kavanaugh sexually assaulted them. Testimony of Blasey Ford and Kavanaugh on Capitol Hill was explosive stuff, which gripped America and the world. Blasey Ford gave a compelling and heartfelt account of what she said happened between her and Kavanaugh.
Dr. Ford, with what degree of certainty do you believe Brett Kavanaugh assaulted you?
100%.
Kavanaugh, for his part, categorically denied the allegations.
I never sexually assaulted anyone.
The case polarized opinion and reignited the Me Too movement in America. Many sympathized with Blasey Ford as a woman who struggled to get her case heard and be believed that she had suffered a horrendous crime. But others sided with Kavanaugh. His supporters maintained he was being smeared and that opinion had presumed him guilty without thinking that he might be innocent. In the end, the Republican control of the Senate allowed Kavanaugh's nomination to be confirmed at the beginning of October. Another major campaign issue was gun control. A nation almost jaded by constant gun attacks was shocked in February when a former student at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida opened fire on students and teachers. When the shooting rampage was over, 17 people lay dead while another 17 were wounded. The suspect, Nicholas Cruz, was arrested shortly after he fled the scene. It was the deadliest shooting at an American high school, surpassing the Columbine High School massacre in April 1999. It galvanized students and anti-gun activists across the United States, with the memory of the Las Vegas attack still fresh in the minds of many. Rallies were held all over the country to pressure the Trump administration to do more on gun control. In a country where mass shootings were now happening frequently, 2 more stood out later in the year for their proximity to the midterm elections. One was an attack on a Pittsburgh synagogue at the end of October, which left 11 dead. The culprit was an anti-Semite who said all Jews must die.
Our nation and the world are shocked and stunned by the grief.
Then, right after the election, another mass shooting. This time, a former soldier walked into a bar in Parkland, California, and shot 10 people dead before taking his own life.
We dropped, and we heard the gunshots. A lot of gunshots. A lot of gunshots.
The bar had become a safe haven for those who had survived the Las Vegas massacre in October 2017. One of the victims had survived the Las Vegas shooting, only to be killed in the bar. Still, no action was taken on gun control. Turbulence hit the Trump administration in other ways this year. Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, came a cropper over the Russia probe. He pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate with investigators, but was later exposed as having lied to the FBI over the probe. He faces prison over his original charges and could be jailed for longer because of this latest twist. In August, Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, pleaded guilty to bank and tax fraud and campaign finance violations. Then, at the end of November, Cohen pleaded guilty again, this time to lying to Congress over the Russia probe. He was jailed for 3 years. With the Russia investigation continuing to be a headache for Trump, the president fired Attorney General Jeff Sessions in November. The next month, U.S. Defense Chief Jim Mattis said he was resigning, apparently over differences with Trump on global security issues. Insider claims about the Trump administration kept on coming. 2018 had barely begun when an explosive book called Fire and Fury exposed a White House in disarray, filled with sycophants and backstabbers, all competing for Trump's attention. It also portrayed Trump as a man out of his depth and struggling to get to grips with the burdens of the Oval Office. Also in January, the Washington Post reported Trump making disparaging remarks about certain nations, asking why America had to take in refugees from S-hole countries. Then, at the end of the summer, an explosive op-ed in the New York Times written by a senior member of the Trump administration. The person described themselves as the resistance within, trying to curb Trump from his worst instincts, thus protecting America. The reaction was one of outrage and betrayal in the White House, with Trump vowing to find and punish whoever wrote it. But perhaps one of the more insidious revelations were reports about Cambridge Analytica and the data it harvested from Facebook users, which proved crucial in helping the Trump team win the White House in 2016. It laid bare how important social media had become and how its manipulation and use as a data pool could turn an electorate and swing elections. Allegations that the British consultancy firm improperly accessed the personal information from millions of Facebook users surfaced in March. Facebook ultimately suspended the firm, but the explosive revelation saw its CEO Mark Zuckerberg testify before the Senate on the scandal.
We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a big mistake.
Cambridge Analytica was forced to shut down. But it wasn't just the US election that Cambridge Analytica's role came under scrutiny for. British authorities launched a probe when it became clear that Cambridge Analytica may have improperly used Facebook data to help the campaign for Britain to quit the European Union. British officials admitted that legal systems worldwide had failed to keep up with the rapid development of the internet, and that tech companies needed to be subjected to greater oversight. On Brexit, the UK experienced more ups and downs this year. British Prime Minister Theresa May maintained her delicate balancing act of keeping the hardline Brexiteers at bay while also frustrating those who sought to keep the UK in Europe. Ministers resigned from her cabinet over disagreements on Brexit, including the British Secretary for leaving the EU, David Davis, and the flamboyant Foreign Minister, Boris Johnson. Many suspected Johnson's resignation was the start of a plot to oust May as Prime Minister. Still, May was clinging on to power by the end of the year. In the middle of November, an apparent breakthrough. Negotiators from Britain and the European Union struck a divorce deal to provide for the UK's smooth exit from the bloc. But the agreement faced major political hurdles as May tried to win the approval of a sceptical Tory party and Parliament. May postponed the December vote, survived a vote of no confidence and went back to Brussels to beg for more concessions. She got none, and the outcome of Brexit remains uncertain as Parliament gets set to vote on the deal in January. Also in Europe, Italy suffered a bruising year. In March, elections for Parliament saw the more traditional parties lose ground. Then, in August, Italy was rocked by the collapse of a major highway bridge in Genoa. What caused a stretch of the bridge to give way, sending trucks and cars plunging into a dry riverbed during a heavy thunderstorm, remains under investigation. Theories range from inadequate maintenance to design flaws. 43 people were killed in the disaster. Staying in Europe, France had a rocky end to 2018. The country was rocked by weekends of mass protests against a decision to raise the tax on fuel, as well as a rise in living costs. The worst of the protests saw Paris engulfed in chaos in December as thousands battled riot police in the heart of the French capital. French President Emmanuel Macron decided to back down from the tax, while promising a rise in the minimum wage. Over in South America, Brazil elected a new president. The winner in October after 2 rounds of voting was Jair Bolsonaro. He's a far-right politician and former army captain who ran on a platform of restoring law and order to Brazil and eradicating corruption. But his opponents point to his nationalist rhetoric, his opposition to LGBT rights, and his admiration of Brazil's former military dictators as reasons he should not be president. Climate change dominates the next part of our programme. Stay tuned.